On January 27, 2026, the U.S. Supreme Court made a decision that sent shockwaves through the global economy. The world watched as the highest court in the United States delivered a verdict that would reverberate far beyond American borders, capturing the attention of governments, investors, and everyday people alike. The court struck down the legal foundation for tariffs imposed by the Trump administration, upending years of trade policy overnight. This landmark ruling instantly called into question the future of countless international agreements and forced policymakers to rethink their approach to global commerce. This wasn't just a technical legal matter, it was a direct challenge to presidential power and a seismic shift for businesses and workers worldwide. The decision sparked heated debate in Washington and sent ripples through boardrooms and factories from New York to Shanghai. For American manufacturers and global exporters alike, the economic landscape changed in an instant. Companies that had spent years adapting to tariffs now faced a new reality, with supply chains and pricing strategies suddenly thrown into flux. Small business owners in the Midwest, long burdened by rising costs, now face both hope and new uncertainty as the rules of competition are rewritten. Some see a chance to finally compete on a level playing field, while others worry about the unknowns that come with such a dramatic policy shift. In Asia and Europe, companies see fresh opportunities but brace for unpredictable fallout. International partners are re-evaluating contracts, and global supply networks are being remapped in real time, as everyone tries to anticipate the next move. The White House has vowed to find new ways to protect American industries, while global markets scramble to adjust. Lawmakers and advisors are working around the clock, seeking solutions to stabilize the economy and reassure anxious investors. The world's supply chains, painstakingly adapted to years of tariffs, must now pivot again. Logistics managers and shipping companies are racing to respond, knowing that every delay or misstep could mean millions lost. The aftershocks of this ruling are only beginning, promising to reshape global trade for years to come. As the dust settles, one thing is clear: the world economy has entered a new era, and no one can predict exactly what comes next. To grasp the impact of the Supreme Court's decision, we need to revisit the origins of the Trump tariffs. Unlike traditional trade measures, these tariffs were imposed using the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, a law meant for true national crises. The Trump administration invoked IEEPA to justify sweeping tariffs, arguing they would combat the flow of fentanyl into the U.S. Critics saw this as a pretext for broad protectionism, bypassing Congress's constitutional authority over trade. The result? Skyrocketing costs for American businesses, retaliatory tariffs from abroad, and a volatile new era for global commerce. These IEEPA-based tariffs stood apart from other trade actions, relying on an unprecedented interpretation of emergency powers. The legal and economic fallout was immediate, setting the stage for a constitutional showdown. The world watched as executive power clashed with legislative authority, with billions of dollars and global supply chains hanging in the balance. The legal fight against the IEEPA tariffs began the moment they were announced. Businesses large and small argued that the president had overstepped, using emergency powers to impose taxes, a clear violation of Congress's role. Lower courts sided with the challengers, questioning the logic of using a fentanyl crisis to justify tariffs on unrelated goods. The administration appealed, and the case reached the Supreme Court in late 2025. During oral arguments, even conservative justices expressed skepticism about the government's reasoning. Justice Amy Coney Barrett noted the chaos that would follow a government loss, especially the challenge of refunding $130 billion in tariffs. The stakes were enormous, not just a legal debate, but a decision with massive financial and political consequences. The court's ruling would define the limits of presidential power and trigger a reckoning for American trade policy. The nation braced for a verdict that would reverberate far beyond the courtroom. The world held its breath as the Supreme Court prepared to announce its decision. At 10 a.m., the news broke. The court had ruled 7-2 against the government, declaring the tariffs illegal. The majority opinion reaffirmed that only Congress can impose taxes and regulate foreign commerce, not the president acting alone. Billions in tariffs were instantly invalidated, and the precedent for executive power was redrawn. President Trump lashed out on social media, calling the ruling a disgrace and warning of financial chaos. Business leaders and international partners, meanwhile, welcomed the decision as a return to stability and the rule of law. The day marked a turning point for American trade and for the balance of power in Washington. The world began to process the implications of this historic judgment. The Supreme Court's decision unleashed a frenzy in global markets, sending shockwaves through trading floors from New York to Hong Kong. Investors scrambled to interpret the ruling's implications, and within minutes, billions of dollars shifted hands as algorithms and traders reacted in real time. U.S. stocks surged, especially in sectors previously hurt by tariffs, such as manufacturing and technology. Meanwhile, some domestic producers braced for renewed competition from imports, uncertain about how the new landscape would affect their bottom lines and workforce stability. The government now faces the daunting task of refunding $130 billion in tariffs, a logistical and fiscal challenge that will test the Treasury's resources and planning. Officials are under pressure to act quickly, as businesses and investors await clarity on the refund process. For many companies, the refunds are a windfall, instantly improving cash flow and fueling new investment and expansion plans. Some firms are already announcing hiring sprees and new projects, eager to capitalize on the sudden influx of capital. Corporate leaders quickly pivoted. Volkswagen reconsidered U.S. expansion, and Elon Musk hailed the ruling as a win for clean energy. Across the boardroom tables, executives are rethinking strategies, partnerships, and future investments in light of the new environment. Yet businesses that had shifted supply chains to avoid tariffs now face tough choices about whether to return operations to the U.S. or adapt to their new global arrangements. The cost and complexity of reversing these changes weigh heavily on decision-makers. Internationally, markets rebounded as the threat of new tariffs vanished overnight. Investors worldwide breathed a sigh of relief, and optimism returned to trading floors in major financial centers. The U.S. dollar dipped slightly, reflecting concerns over the massive government payout and its potential impact on fiscal stability. Currency traders are watching closely for further moves. The sudden end to the trade war brought relief, but also new uncertainty as companies and countries recalibrated. Strategic plans are being rewritten, and risk assessments updated to reflect the new reality. The global economy, once braced for prolonged conflict, now faces a rapid and unpredictable reset. Economists warn that the coming months will be marked by volatility and rapid change. Winners and losers are being decided in real time as fortunes shift and new opportunities emerge from the chaos. The world's economic map is being redrawn, and the next chapter of global commerce is just beginning. The Supreme Court's ruling is a direct check on presidential authority, especially the use of emergency powers to bypass Congress. For President Trump, it's a major political blow, dismantling a key part of his America First agenda and drawing criticism from both sides of the aisle. The decision forces the administration to seek new, more limited legal avenues for protectionist policies. In Congress, the ruling has sparked calls for a more collaborative approach to trade, with lawmakers demanding a return to constitutional norms. The precedent is clear. Future presidents will face higher legal barriers when invoking emergency powers for broad economic actions. The balance of power has shifted, empowering Congress and setting the stage for a new era of legislative-executive relations. The political debate over trade and executive authority is far from over, but the rules of engagement have changed permanently. The Supreme Court's decision is reshaping global alliances and rivalries. Allies like Canada and the EU see a chance to reset relations, while new trade deals, like India and the EU's, signal a more multipolar world. Countries are diversifying away from U.S. dependence, forging new partnerships in response to years of American protectionism. The removal of tariffs changes the dynamics of upcoming trade talks, strengthening the hand of U.S. partners. The U.S.-China relationship enters a new phase. While some duties remain, Beijing claims a victory against unilateral American action. The end of this chapter doesn't mean peace, just a shift to new battlegrounds and strategies. The global economic order is in flux, with the U.S. no longer the undisputed center. The world is watching to see what comes next. Legal and economic experts agree. This is one of the most significant rulings on presidential power in decades, with far-reaching implications for how the U.S. government manages its economic relationships and responds to global challenges. The decision is already being dissected in law schools, think tanks, and boardrooms across the country, as analysts try to understand its full impact. Harvard's Joanna Schwartz says the court has reinforced Congress's authority over trade and spending, placing new limits on emergency powers. She notes this could restore a more balanced approach to economic policy, where major decisions require broader consensus and public debate, rather than swift executive action. Economists, like Mark Zandi, predict lower prices and less inflation, but warn of a messy transition as companies rework supply chains. Businesses may face short-term uncertainty, but many believe the long-term benefits of stability and predictability will outweigh the initial disruptions. Former U.S. Trade Representative Carla Hills calls it a return to more stable, negotiated trade policy, less executive order, more diplomacy. She emphasizes that this shift could help rebuild trust with international partners and encourage more transparent, rules-based agreements. Yet the appetite for protectionism remains strong, and the White House is already exploring other legal tools. Political leaders are under pressure to protect American industries and jobs, ensuring that the debate over trade policy is far from settled. Trade expert Scott Lincecum notes, "The battle over tariffs may be lost, but the broader war over America's global economic role continues. The U.S. must now navigate a complex landscape of shifting alliances and emerging competitors. The ruling forces a shift in strategy, but not in the underlying political conflict. Deep divisions remain over how best to balance national interests with global responsibilities. The world must now adapt to a new, more predictable, but still contentious, trade environment. International businesses and governments are watching closely, preparing for both opportunities and challenges ahead. The story of American trade is far from over. This landmark ruling marks a new chapter, but the debates and decisions that shape the nation's economic future are just beginning. The Supreme Court's ruling marks not an end, but a new beginning for American trade policy. Businesses must quickly adapt, balancing the promise of refunds with the challenge of reconfiguring supply chains. Consumers may see lower prices, but workers in protected industries face renewed competition. The decision forces a national conversation about supporting American workers through innovation and targeted assistance, not broad tariffs. Politically, the ruling reasserts the balance of power between Congress and the President, demanding a return to legislative solutions. The principles at stake, rule of law, separation of powers, America's global role, are foundational. This is a turning point, offering a chance to build a more stable and fair global economic order. The challenges ahead are real, but so is the opportunity for smarter, more durable trade policy. The next chapter belongs to all of us.